Good morning. This is the September 13th Jupyter Dev meeting. We've got a great lineup of folks today. So I guess we'll start with, what should we start with? Let's start with introducing one of our newest team members who just joined Bloomberg. Jason, would you like to do the introductions?
No, I'd rather he do it. He's more of an old timer here than I am.
Fine, you can introduce yourself.
Hey, so I went on a really long bike ride for the last 2 years. I guess the project name has changed, so that's cool. Paul Liebenoff, I also go by Pi. Yeah, just joined Bloomberg. It's my second day, so there you go. So I'm back. Watch out.
Welcome.
So, yeah, I mean, can you say something about what you did before, just for the internet audience that has been just following in the last year?
Sure. So used to be IPython core contributor. I guess I'm still an IPython core contributor, but I used to work on the notebook, used to work on IPython core, used to contribute to Matplotlib, dropped off doing all those things for the last 2 years while I was working at Disqus. But now that comments on the internet are going on their own, I'm back to work on Jupyter again.
Great. Welcome.
Thanks.
So let's see. Min, you want to give an update?
Yeah, just a couple releases of things, trailets and core in the last few days. The main thing that I'm going to be working on that it will be useful from people in general is the new stuff for the next release of Jupyter Hub is now all merged. So I'm just working on testing that and testing with the NB grader and all the spawners and things, and docs for updating and everything. And that's the main thing I'm doing for the next little while.
Great. Thanks, Ben. Let's see. Matthias.
Hey, nothing serious, just saying that Python 3.6 beta 1 is out. If we can test with multiple packages to make sure that all the features we use are available in 3.6 and there is no regression, it's the time to complain so that things that have been removed from Python or added don't break any of our code. Typically, there have been some syntax warnings that now are syntax errors that broke some packages. And we also have some pretty nice new features only on 3.6 though that would be really nice for users. Like now you have subclass of import error, which is module not found. So we might be able to detect when the user has not something installed or when something failed to import. Anyway, that's about it for me. Just if we can make sure on Travis that to test on 3.6 once it's available, and complain upstream as soon as possible.
Right, so beta 1 means feature freeze, right?
It's normally feature freeze, so they won't add any features. But if something is basically relied upon on too many packages, they might roll that back. In particular, one of the latest change is compact dict, like dictionary now in CPython are ordered, preserve the insertion order as a side effect, which might have weird effects if we rely on a key not being ordered. Actually, it might be the opposite now. If you write on 3.6, it might fail on other version. But there have already been a few segfault and people that complain about that. It's a pretty deep change. It might have effects we don't really know in config, especially I'm thinking about traitlets that do a lot of meta class things. Or if you access directly tenderdict, it might behave differently. So yeah, just to make sure that we test that we can, at least with hacks, get all the tests passing to make sure that 3.6 will not completely broke one of our feature. Thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Matthias. Jason, I think looks like you're the next one on the list.
Actually, is Steve around? I think it would be better for him to give a brief update, and that can follow up with what I've been doing with widgets. This is a big enough change and sort of revolutionary thing in Jupyter Lab that it probably deserves mention, at least the FYI heads up in the dev meeting.
Sure. We created a new repository for creating third-party extensions and also the way they're consumed from Jupyter Lab itself. We're using that from Jupyter Lab to build the core plugins. And we also added a lab extension that follows the same sort of workflow as the Jupyter Notebook MB extension command line script. And then Jason used that to create the IPyWidgets lab extension, and he can follow up on that. But basically what we have is we're, for most third-party extension authors, they just run a script with their entry point that returns a list of an array of plugins. And for an advanced user, they might have to provide more Webpack config in terms of more loaders or preloaders. But for most third-party extension authors, our use of web.
Did we lose sound?
It wasn't me, it was him. Okay. So I guess just big. Oh, there he is. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, my network's going in and out.
Most third-party.
For most third-party extensions, yeah, they'll just run our script, and our use of Webpack is an implementation detail. But for more advanced use cases, they can add extra Webpack config for their specific use case. And that's all I'm going to say before I lose my network again.
I think the biggest thing. I think the biggest thing for us is an announcement that we've got an initial system in place after several iterations and hitting roadblocks and solving them. Thanks again to Chris and Brian and other people who had tons of helpful feedback and for design and architecture and stuff. We're stress testing it now, so we have a system that works okay and possibly even well. But this is a good stress test time. So if anybody wants to write a third-party Jupyter Lab extension, this is a good time to test the extension system. There, Peter's asking if there's a Peter. Why don't you just ask your question?
I want to bug you while you're talking. I figured you'd read it afterwards, but yeah, do you have a link to the branch or PR just so I can review like how it was done?
Yeah. Well, we'll put a link into the PR. So there's a PR to Jupyter Lab, which makes a new Jupyter Lab extension command, and then there's an entirely separate repo which bundles up all this Webpack plugin and magic and everything, and then I can put a link to the working IPyWidget extension. An example of like how you do it, like the one command you run essentially.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
All right. Let's see here. Jason, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
Nope, that's it.
Okay. Eric Dill.
Yeah.
Want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, I can introduce myself again. Well, I mean, I guess in the context of this, I've been involved with Conda Forge for a little while now, and am comfortable enough with Conda Forge that I feel confident volunteering to help with Conda packaging for any and all needs if you guys have those needs.
I have a need right now. I have tried to update the Jupyter Lab package for Conda Forge, and it complained. It had a Circle CI error, and somebody suggested that we do Conda Smithy on it again. And I'm running into some problems because I need to generate an Anaconda token or something like that. Anyway, and now I'm trying to wait on a password reset request or something.
The notes for this, I don't have it up. Yeah. So
apparently the Jupyter Lab Conda Forge package needs to be re-smithied.
Okay.
That's correct verb.
Yep. It's close enough that I know exactly what you're talking about,
Okay.
and I'm not actually sure how to say it in a better way. So it's yeah.
If we have a few seconds, can you take like 2 minutes and talk about like the origin of Conda Forge and what part it plays in the packaging? I find myself fairly ignorant of Conda Forge, even though I have several packages that I maintain on it.
Yeah.
Of it, like anyway.
Yeah. So I'll happily give it a shot, and anybody else can jump in and correct me where I will surely go wrong here. But essentially, it got started to make Conda packaging more transparent. A lot of the Conda packages that were distributed by Continuum, the recipes were not available, and so it wasn't exactly clear how they were being created and what tools were being used to create them. So this was kind of a twofold effort. One, to have a community-driven approach to creating Conda packages. Two, the second point, I guess, would be to make Conda packaging more open and transparent. And the third issue was that there was a repo on one of Continuum's orgs that was kind of a dumping ground for recipes, but they weren't necessarily being used to do anything. They were just kind of there, but they weren't mirrored or built onto anaconda.org. And so Conda Forge is attempting to fill all of those voids by having a place where anybody can submit a recipe to build. It'll go and build on Circle CI to build for Linux. It'll build on Travis for OS X and AtBear for Windows. And those three services are used to basically test your build and make sure that it will work. And then after it's been reviewed and merged, you get your own feedstock, which is essentially a place where you can control who has commit rights to the recipe. And anytime the recipe is updated, new builds are created and uploaded to the Conda Forge channel on anaconda.org.
What's the relationship between Continuum and Conda Forge?
There's no official affiliation. Mike Sarahan, I think, is the lead developer of Conda Build, I think. And he is on every bi-weekly dev call, and is fairly involved. And there's a couple more people from Continuum that are on those dev calls. It's not like an official Continuum project, but it does seem to have the blessing of Continuum.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, if it's led and sort of outside of Continuum from the community, or if it's...
Yes, it's led outside of Continuum.
Okay. Cool, thanks.
Sure.
Thanks. Hey, how about we hear from Kyle Kelly? Are you ready, Kyle?
Yeah, I literally just started typing some notes.
I noticed.
I could have shared this at the last one, but I missed it. Made a PR for MB format, so now we can do embedded raw JSON, just like we can do for application JSON. But if you have a custom MIME type that has the plus JSON suffix, it can be raw in the notebook format instead of a double encoded string. So the ones that are already, so we're already using these within Interact with GeoJSON, Plotly, and then I have a prototype Vega renderer. So I'm guessing it would work much the same for for Jupyter Lab, for the way that the extensions are built for the MIME types. So, yep.
Yeah, the notebook format. Wait, so this is the NB format spec, right? That you're.
Yep.
Okay, so that'll involve. Well, I mean, we don't want to do anything until we actually release the NB. I mean, because that involves a version bump and backwards compatibility and everything, right, man?
Yeah, well, we already in NB format, we already said that JSON stuff shouldn't be double encoded.
And I think MIME type application /
the MIME
JSON.
type Yeah. And essentially all this is saying for custom, that you could say that this is relaxing the a regular expression to what it should have been.
Yeah, I agree.
So there's kind of some semantics about what that actually means for versioning in terms of the spec as opposed to the Python implementation of it.
Yeah, so at what point should we implement it?
I don't know. We should probably do a release pretty soon, and you can look at implementing. I mean, you could do a backward compatible version that always works, just by checking if it's a string.
Yeah.
And if it is,
so that's how we're handling it. Yeah.
I would describe it as things that are application / whatever plus JSON are erroneously double encoded in the current implementation. That really the only thing is in the JSON schema. It doesn't correctly capture JSON content when validating whether it should be a string or not. So I think you can go ahead and now is a fine time.
Okay, so you can do a backwards compatible thing by just looking to see if it's a string. If it's not a string, then assume it's JSON encoded, or assume that it's already.
And
there's a little bit of trickiness there too, which is that because the previous spec was a multi-line string, which means it could be an array of strings. That top level key can only be an object right now.
It can't.
Because it couldn't be an array, even though it should be able to be an array.
Array is a multi-line string. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. It can't be. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
So I think I noted that in the PR in the issue, and I was just like, well, that sucks, but that's okay. Top level object's still fine.
Yeah.
But in the future, we should probably allow it to be any JSON.
Yeah, and the reality of the thing is that there are. You're not going to break anything.
Yep.
Because people weren't using it.
Okay. Well, we don't know, right? There could be all sorts of custom that were sent.
Yeah. Well, the protocol and the format support arbitrary formats. The actual use of those things is thin.
Okay.
Are you guys good with that? Do you need a follow-up conversation, or?
It could probably happen on the PR.
I'll link the PRs and issues. They're in the MB format repo, so it's worth following the repo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Kyle.
And it looks like Hackpad again corrupted our notes. I did not really want super bolded heading. I think we at some point in the past we talked about moving off of Hackpad because of this data corruption issue.
Yes.
And I think I put out a few alternatives. SageMath Cloud seemed like a one of the best alternatives for collaboratively taking notes that could be public. Okay, maybe next time I'll present this again to be serious about possibly moving off of Hackpad because of the data corruption.
I think we're all on the same page with that. It's somebody's taking the time to
present alternatives. I'll talk about it next week.
Okay.
The heading is wrong though.
Yeah.
So I went back last week to fix it. I can do the same thing this week. Yeah. Let's see. I wanted to just say hi, Thomas. Welcome back from your travels. Great to see you. He's got some great pictures in the Hackpad. Hey, anything you want to add today?
No, I don't think so. Just that I'll be getting back up to speed now.
Great. Awesome. I just wanted to give a couple updates on the project management side. So I meet with Fernando and Brian. We try to aim for once a week just to go over general project stuff. And out of the meeting that we had last week, looks like we're working on writing a new grant report. So this is an annual grant report that's due at the end of November. So we'll be working on that and reaching out to people for feedback. We'd like to do it in a Google Doc so folks can just add their piece to each of the sections where it's relevant. And so you might hear more from us on that front. Let's see here. The November dev meeting we're working on scheduling that. In the last, our last Jupyter meeting on last Tuesday, we mentioned to the group that we had scheduled this during election week in the US, which, this is an important week for us here. So for those of you who want to make sure that you get your vote in, we're presenting 3 options. One is you can do early voting, you can do absentee voting, and if you're not able to do either of those, we would like you to please let us know. Any single person has veto power on this meeting because this is such an important event. So just let us know. Anna and I will send out an email sometime this week just to get individual feedback if you're not comfortable sharing here. Grant's working through triaging issues, and of course, as he's doing that, he's seeing a lot of opportunities for streamlining the process. So you may see some updates in GitHub from us on that side. And Ian Rose should be starting any day now. So he's waiting for his appointment with HR here at Berkeley. So you may see him on the next Tuesday call or maybe the week after. So that's all I have. Anna, are you on the call and did you want to share anything?
I am on the call. I'm just pulling together an email to follow up on your comment on Election Day and also to ask people for any recommendations for venues in New York that they may have. We do have some options, no winners yet. So this is kind of the last week that we have to add any additional options that people may have. So I'll send out a message now. And I think Fernando's request was that everyone respond in the positive, in that they were okay with the meeting dates as opposed to having people flag issues. So I am going to request that everybody respond to the email with an affirmative. And that's about it.
All right. Does anybody else have, anyone else have something to add before we sign off? Crickets. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming together today. We'll catch you next week.